What's up folks, today we're building a drone. So I wouldn't normally put out a video like this, but I recently teamed up with Team Black Sheep to bring this out as a kit. This is the drone that I use on most of the filming that I do, for long range, for filming action sports, for flying inside and outside of buildings. I've used it a lot in different places around the globe, and I'm really happy with it. So I thought it was a good moment to bring this out as a platform as is. You can get it from Team Black Sheep as a fully built thing, ready to fly if you want to, but you can also just get it as a kit, and this would land you here, on how you build this. And well, that's what I'm going to do in this video, is show you how I build this up with attention to some of the small details that I like to put in there. Different people may have different preferences, so maybe you find your own way of building it. That's even better. Let me know in the comments. Either way, I hope this is detailed enough. If not, ask questions in the comments. I'll try my best to answer you. And yeah, there's also a manual for the drone, which covers how to use it, how to get the most out of it. This will also be covered in different videos that I'll be doing on the drone itself. But yeah, let's just get to building it, and yeah, I hope I'll see you at the end of the video. Actually, so before we get started, you will need a soldering iron. Hopefully you know how to use that and you've done some soldering before. You'll need a hot glue gun or some sort of liquid tape, something like that. You will need some solder. You'll need some double-sided sticky tape. This one is like silicone tape, double-sided silicone tape that works super well to stick stuff on. And some tape, just electrical tape. Let's start. Okay, so I've actually gone ahead and started off the build a bit. So basically preparing some of the individual parts. Let's have a look at them one after the other. So the first thing you want to assemble is the camera pod. If it doesn't come pre-assembled, it's pretty simple. There is a standoff that you need to slot into here, and then there's basically two screws that go in sideways and squish the TPU together. There's just a washer that is here, just under the screws, to make sure you don't destroy the TPU, and that's pretty much your hinge done. Next thing you want to do is you want to grab the camera, which is the Runcam Micro Eagle. Here I've already gone ahead and swapped out the lens. The way you do that is you just unscrew this lens here. You want to keep the little locker that's here, the nut, and then you want to put that onto the new lens, screw that in, and then you obviously focus it later on. But for now it should look a bit like this. You just pop this in, and there's two screws that you put into the sides here. I really recommend using the wider RC25G lens for the Runcam, just because it makes it way of a wider lens. The stock lens is good, but it's really zoomed in, so it isn't the best if you're trying to get some spatial awareness, and that's how I'm used to flying anyway. Anyway, that's the camera pod mostly done. I lost the back sticker here because I conformal coated the back of the circuit. I usually like just covering the whole thing in hot glue afterwards. That avoids any water getting into the circuit. Yep. That's not pretty, but it does the job. Makes sure that the camera stays, dry, and that's good. All right, let's put it out the way. Next thing you'll want to do is put on the motors onto the arms. You'll see I've already pre-taped here the side. You want to slip on the TPU protector and make sure that on each screw you put two washers. That's because the screws tend to be a bit long, and you just want to make sure that they have the right length and they don't touch the windings on the motor inside. So just put on the last screw here. There you go. So you just want to make sure that the screw here inside does not touch the windings, otherwise you will be damaging the motor. So you'll want to do this 4 times. For the front two motors, I've already gone ahead and cut all the wires to the right length. If you look at the length here, you've got about 10 centimeters of motor wire. That's for the front motors. And for the back ones, we have about 13 centimeters. That should give everybody the right length, and everything's good. That's your arms. Next comes the bottom plate. This is the bottom plate because it doesn't have any holes in it. So I usually just stick on the VTX, just like so. There's 5 millimeters behind the last holes here. Have it on it, the bottom plate. Easy. Now for the top plate, that one's a bit longer. I just thread the 2 screws, put on the back bumper here. Doesn't matter which way it is, it holds on as it is. Then you want to put the 2 back standoffs. That is, those are attached in the last 2 holes. In the opposite direction, if you put these downward, these go upward. And then you want to mount your 4 structural screws from the stack. With one key difference. One key point is that there's one key point here. The screws that come with the Hobbywing stack are slightly too long. So what you want to do is add a tiny little washer here, so that the screw doesn't poke out that long, and then you use one of those aluminium locking nuts to hold the thing in place. So that's your top plate. Okay, next you'll want to prepare your nano crossfire. I've just gone ahead and popped in the antenna and soldered on the 3 wires. So you have negative, 5 volt, and your signal. The wires here are about 9 centimeters long, roughly that. Once you've got that, heat shrink it with the heat shrink that comes in the package, and then put it away. The next thing you'll want to do is prepare the flight controller. I've gone ahead and conformal coated it. You don't need to do that, but it's a cool thing to do. I've watched out not to cover the barometer, which is right here, and not to cover the pins for the SD card slot. Now the ESC comes with one of these wires. You do want to de-pin the last 2 wires from the ribbon, this connector. You don't need those. That's the 10 volt and the ground. You don't need those for the Brain FPV. So once you're done, this should look something like that. You only keep the white cables. Then you can plug that into your flight controller, and it's mostly ready to go. Okay, next one up is the ESC. Here I'm using the 45 amp Hobbywing. I've cut the power cable to be roughly, what do we have here? 9 centimeters, 9.5, to the tip of the connector here. Make sure to wire this sideways. So first on you solder the positive, and then you put the negative over. Make sure that the 2 are roughly the right length, so that you don't have any weird things going on. And then I've gone ahead already and soldered the cap. So there's just 2 little wires, one which goes to negative, one which goes to the positive. Here again, make sure that your cap is far enough away. I've had this set up at roughly 4 centimeters. Then what I usually do is just hot glue. The terminals here, so that we don't get any short, because this is going to be essentially taped to the frame. So you want to make sure that you don't have anything shorting out. That's mostly it. Alright, let's put that away. Next thing you want to do is prepare the cable for the video transmitter, and which goes to the camera. You'll see that this wire is actually super long. Let me get you a measurement on that. Focus up. Alright, so from camera to VTX, I'm reading 17.5 centimeters, and the other wires for the VTX, so that is its power, the ground, and the smart audio, those are roughly 6.5 centimeters. So you need to make sure that this is long enough, because the camera pod at the front is going to be tilting front and back, and the wires sticks into the top here, and it needs to be long enough so that you have space to tilt downward and upward no matter what you want to do. You also want to make sure that your video cable, which is this yellow one here, this is going to be going to the flight controller. I've got this at roughly 10 centimeters. You want to make sure that the one coming from the camera and going to the flight controller is also long enough. I've actually extended this one here. This is why there's this bit of tape. I'm running that one at roughly 12 centimeters. So your wire should look something like this, I guess. So in the end, this should look something like this. Here you're going from the camera to the flight controller. This is the video out. This is the video out from the flight controller, and this is going to the VTX. And then you have these 3 wires for power to the VTX, negative, and smart audio. Okay, so we have most of the parts ready. Now all we really need to do is just assemble all of this. Okay, so I'm going to start with the top plate. I think that's a good way to go. I'm going to put on the ESC. See that the cap here goes out to the side and the power wires go to the other side. I'll continue with the flight controller. The flight controller USB port needs to be out to the side, so this is going to go this way, and then this wire goes into here. There we go. Okay, that's how it's going to go. I'm going to use 4 of these little spacers that you come with the ESC. These are threaded. There's 2 types of them. There's the ones that are non-threaded, that are just a spacer. I'd use this threaded one here. I don't know. That's what I'm using. Okay, and that's my stack. I then use some of these tiny little nylon nuts. And there we have it. This is just the basics of our flight stack. I'm going to go ahead and tape this onto the side of the standoff. We'll need a tad of double-sided tape. Make sure in this process that none of the wires here are getting pinched between the carbon and the cap, and that nothing is exposed, no contacts, nothing. So that's pretty good. And then we just seal the deal with a bit of tape or a bit of zip tie. Should we put a zip tie? No, I'm putting tape. Here's just a snip of tape. Gonna take the cap like that and then just run the tape all around, making sure that it is tight. Fold that back. And there we go. That's a cap in place. Right here. It's normal if this moves a bit, it's meant to be a bit flexible. And there we go. That's our stack. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is attach your crossfire. I usually put it right here, under the plate. You want to make sure that the wire sticks out to the right, because our TPU mount, to mount the antenna, is going to be out to the right. And you need to give it quite a bit of length. So it goes right here. So I'm gonna just grab some double-sided tape. Attach this to the back here. Here, line it up with the back of the hole, and that's about it. Remember to make sure that the button here stays accessible, because you're going to have to press that to bind to your remote. And now let's feed this through the center hole. Okay, and now it gets a bit tricky. So the two power wires need to be soldered to the main battery connector right here. And the X-Fire connector is going to go where it says, wait, what am I saying? No, sorry, scrap that. So you need to wire, so you need to route the wire, so you need to route the wires through the main hole here in the back. And these three wires are just going to be soldered onto the flight controller. We are going onto the three pads here. We have RX3, which is where my crossfire signal is going. We have plus, which is where the power for the crossfire is going to go. And we have a ground. So that's where these are going. I have pre-tinned all of these wires. So this is why I can just now solder these on directly. But if you've not pre-tinned the wires, make sure to do that before attempting this. Remember that flight control boards are pretty sensitive, so don't over crank them with heat. Looks good. And there we go. No, I'm not liking this last one. Alright. Okay, there we go. There we have our crossfire connected. Tuck these out to the side. And that's our crossfire. Okay, now the next thing you want to do is set up the video wire. So I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but on this connector I have depinned the green wire, which was the audio wire, and I've only kept the smart audio wire. So I mean, it doesn't really matter how we do this at the moment, but eventually this is all going to be underneath here. You want to route these three wires through the main hole and solder these on. So the power wires need to go onto the main battery pads, because that's how we're going to power the VTX, while the smart audio just goes to TX6. So let's do that. Start off with smart audio, that's the easier one. Let me get a bit of So soldering on the main battery pads when you already have the, everything wired gets really annoying. So I would recommend putting down a bit of solder first, fresh. Especially when you're like me and you have a super old solder tip that does not heat things well at all. and some sort of a blob. I usually tend to just get my wire ready how I need it, and then just you know, crank some heat at this thing. And then poke in my wire, and there we go. Big even solder across that. Now let's do the same, or attempt to do the same, for the negative. Okay, and there you go. Now we have, let me show you this closer. There you go, we have our wire for the VTX. We've got our smart audio routed to TX6. And we have our two power wires that are going to the main connector. Alright, so now our connector is ready. It is time to feed through the wires for the flight controller. So I normally feed these through the hole just under the stack. So feed through. It doesn't want to come out. Standard. Some tweezers to delicately. Set. Delicately. There, you feed through the camera wire. Go straight through. The other yellow wire needs to go right here next to it, so you also feed that through. Okay, now we're ready for the video part. So the yellow wire that we have here that's going to the VTX needs to go to the V out pad from the OSD, whereas the wire that's coming from the camera, which is going to be attached to this, the camera is going to be attached here, so the wire that's coming out of this, which is the blue one here in this case, is going to V in on the flight controller. Okay, now this is basically our electronics flight stack complete. We got cable ready for the VTX here at the bottom, and everything else is in place. So now the next job is just to assemble the two main plates. Basically, this plate comes under here. Alright. There is a subtlety here. So you want to make sure that this SMA connector does not touch any of the carbon plates. And so what you want to do is grab a layer of tape. Doesn't need to be very long, just about this much. And you want to make a cut in the middle and just poke it with a knife. Just get a little hole in there. What you then do is feed this over the SMA, like so. And once you have it like that, you want to make sure that it covers the sides here, the sides of the connector, so that that doesn't go shorting out with the carbon. Once you've done that, let's put our plates together. Let's feed the SMA through the TPU mount at the back here. There we go. And we can now start closing up the frame. And make sure that the connector here is out of the way. Let's pull that up to the side for now. Alright, so this is mostly what it's going to look like. Let's put the motors on. Remember, the back motors have long wires and the front motors have short wires. So that's it, we have our motors on. Next thing we should do is solder them on to the ESC. Okay, we're almost done. Next thing is going to be to attach the camera pod. That goes on just like that. There are 2 screws that we need to send through the bottom. Right there and there. You can either squish those in or thread those through. It's a bit up to you. And then on the other side, we need to grab the standoffs. So you want to watch out here a bit. You want to make sure that the standoff needs to be tight to the screw, but on the other hand, the screw doesn't need to be fully tight on the TPU, because TPU is flexible. So if you start over tightening this screw, it's just going to sort of compress the front part together. So just tighten it a bit, not too much at this point. And then you can actually put your top plate on. Start with the left screw. Now you'll need the TPU mount for the crossfire antenna. Let's do that. Slot in. Yeah. So you are almost there. Two more things you need to do. Right now the wire of the crossfire is sort of touching these the wires coming from the ESCs. This is not a good thing because there's a lot of electromagnetic noise. So I generally just zip tie the wire here to the front standoff of the stack. So not the frame itself, but just the standoff from the stack. You just try and thread that through. Okay, that's almost it. Two little details. I like to put a bit of hot glue around the back of the wire here, just because over time, when you're like in transport, stuff like that, it creates strain on the back here of the wire, and that tends to get damaged over time. So I just hot glue a bit around the back here. Go. And another thing, so right now the wire is nice and long here. You will need it long so you can tilt your camera downward if you so desire, or upward, but you want to make sure that this doesn't get into the props either side or gets pinched with the carbon when you try to push this back. If you have this in the middle, it gets pinched with the carbon right here. So what you want to do is attach this to the side. If you look at it from the back, you just want to make sure that this is over to the side so that it's behind this carbon line. So somewhere here. I usually just added a bit of hot glue here. Let that dry. Okay, that is now dried, and from there on I usually just like to attach the other side of the wire here to the bottom, just so it doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't start pulling on cables or connectors anywhere. So it's another dab of hot glue down here at the bottom. And there we have it. The hinge is now free to move without pinching any wires or damaging anything. There you go. That is your fully built Ichabod Jr. There you go. You want to tighten the back two screws. Okay, this time we are done. So that's the frame, fully built. So there you go guys, there you have it, that's the Ichabod build. I hope you could follow along with the video and that everything was clear enough. Otherwise, just leave a comment on the video and I'll try my best to answer that and to help you out. The frame as it is, I mean, this is how I use it, how I fly it. Maybe there's better ways to build it. Maybe there's something that suits you better. Just, you know, let me know, try it out, you know, go knock yourself out, design something for it. As it is right now, it's not programmed. You will need to bind it as well to your receiver, so I'd recommend for that you remove the front pod again, remove the 2 front screws there, so you can access the bind button, bind it to your radio. Otherwise, the programming of the card through Betaflight is very easy. You want to look at the manual though for that. I have a full dump for that, you can just dump it on and normally it should work as it should. You want to make sure that your 4 motors are spinning the right way. That's in the Biahalli configuration. That's also in the manual, and you should be flying in no time. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot for following along all this way, and see you next time.